I'm Christine Dean. I'm your DFW Networking Diva, and I love to connect people with other people, products, places, events, whatever it is I think will help enhance their lives. And I am so excited today to connect with Dr. Justin Velton, who is the CEO and co-founder of Go Culture. And we have Andrew Brucey, which is a user of the product and has been using it for quite a while. So we have our fans and we have the creator. So we are quite lucky this morning to have insights from both sides. And what I was really interested in talking about was a little bit about what thought went into creation of this product and how you see it transforming the culture in an organization.
Yeah. Thank you, Christine. That's a great question. And so, what the thought that went into this, wasn't what it was not was just a kind of random questionnaire and a little bit of training that sometimes we see done in industry, and those things can be helpful, but they only reach a certain place and kind of the helpfulness scale. You think of it that way. We spent 20 years in this process of developing an assessment that was incredibly accurate, and then training around that assessment to understand how in the world we think and see and our attitudes and behaviors around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we spent 8 years in development of that. Then we spent the next 13 years testing it in so many different contexts with so many different people around the world, and found a lot of similarity in our human behavior interactions and what drives our ability, or aptitude, you might call it, in our ability to engage with diverse others, treat each other with equality and egalitarian manner, and to be inclusive of others, not just to be around people who may be different from you, but how do we actually take a step out and include ourselves and include them? And so those are two kind of different ways to look at inclusivity, but how do we be inclusive of others? And so what we see is that in an organization, a company, or it could be a nonprofit organization, it could be a for-profit organization, all different areas. What we see is that if we can actually understand an individual and why that person really struggles, or why that person is really good at diversity, equity, inclusion, and again in their attitudes and behaviors, then we can begin to influence that person. And if we do that with enough people, begin to open their eyes about, wow, there are some things here that I didn't know about myself. And with self-reflection or kind of realization, that is the foundation, or what you might call the starting point of learning. Sometimes I've talked about, if you have an annoying laugh, there's no way you're ever going to know that and know to fix it, or not fix it, but to change it possibly if you would like, unless somebody says, maybe a good friend says, hey, that laugh's kind of annoying. It's that moment of self-realization where you think, oh, maybe there's an area where I can make a positive improvement. And so the same is true with what we're doing. We're providing individuals with some self-reflection of why they have strong aptitudes or not in diversity, equity, inclusion, attitudes and behaviors, and then how do we help them improve?
Well, so that kind of makes me think, Andrew, you've been actually using this within organizations. So if you take what Dr. Velton has said and we actually apply it in real world, what are you seeing? How's that impacting the workforce there, or an organization, how they flow and how they're working together when you take that concept of inclusion versus exclusion and making people more aware? What's happening?
Sure. And, I first started off as a direct customer of Go Culture. So when I first got in touch with Dr. Velton, I was looking at Go Culture as a product for my team, and I wanted to see what we could do with it. So something that was cost effective to give to my entire team so we can train them on that. And especially, we have a lot of remote workers, and we work with a lot of contractors that may be in a different country. So working with different cultures was essential. When I started to use that, then we started to implement it with our clients. So Vendium is an HR consultancy firm that helps connect people by using technology. And to answer your question, Christine, I'll use a funny example where in a lot of our training sessions, what I'll do is I always play a prank on them. I'll cut right to the climactic point for our purposes. Don't tell anyone though. I assume this won't be broadcasted anywhere. But what I'll do is I'll start describing the human brain. And since we deal with conversational AI so much, that I'm acting like I'm describing an AI. So AI and human brains are very similar in the fact that they are pattern matching tools. So we will determine things based off of essentially an internal process map of what we've learned through our life, through experiences, and through enculturation of wherever we are. So culture is a collection of norms, values, and beliefs in a certain area and a certain population. That applies to organizational culture, just societal culture, environmental culture. There's so many different aspects of it. So when I go through this and I trick everyone, and then at the end I'm saying, this is you, it's because that pathway, whatever we've taken, every experience that we've had in our life, every internal scar, every accomplishment that we've had, it's the reason why discipline is important in family environments or through our development as humans, because we learn, hey, don't touch the stove, otherwise you're going to get burned. And that has also an unfortunate effect when we are looking at human interactions. Because if we feel like I have an assumption about someone, where Christine, you and I were having a conversation of saying, if you meet someone for the first time and they say, I am a police officer, you're going to assume a whole myriad of traits along with that person. So the benefit that we found with Go Culture in the real world environment is, yes, we do have a lot of corporate clients that try things like, we're no longer using titles. I personally hate that, because if I'm talking to an executive, my communication style will be different if I'm talking to someone that is an operator. They need two different pieces of information. They do that to remove the frame of I'm talking to an X. And so what the great thing that Go Culture does is it will show us where we're finding those traits, where we're pattern matching to go in a certain direction, and how to improve upon it.
Well, so I'm wondering, what kind of environment is that creating in the workplace then, when we take away some of those labels, when we start helping with awareness? What's that do to the culture of the organization and how people interact with each other?
Mm-hmm. A great question. So it does a few different things that we found. So partly is team members will work better together. And that is one of the most important things from the foundation of any organization. We have different teams that we work with and different groups that we work with as far as stakeholders, or whether or not we're working with someone from another country or across the aisle. The awareness helps to build the first foundation, which is the building block to expand beyond that. In Vendium, we have a value which we describe as tribe. It's because we always say that the enemy is outside of the gate. If you consider and view yourself as within the walls, then anyone within that organization, do not view them as the enemy, because you're all going towards the same common goal. So the awareness takes the moment to kind of take a step back, take a deep breath, even if you are interpreting in a situation, which we've all been there with, something as simple as an email. An email, you can't see me, you can't hear my voice, you can't hear my tone. And when we're working across cultures or working in diverse environments, that becomes even more the case, because the context of what is going on in that messaging can turn you to be aggressive towards them. They will respond back potentially in kind or feel attacked. So it's helping humans connect with other humans in ways that they didn't realize that they were disconnecting before.
So that gives us some practical use and what this transforms within the organization. And I would assume that there's going to be some kind of correlation to what, productivity, bottom line kind of issues.
Absolutely. So Forbes has reported that organizations that take diversity seriously can realize a 24% higher revenue growth. And part of that is, I use the analogy sometimes of, if you're building a house, then you want to make sure that you have people of different expertises that are working at building that house. You want to build a palace, right? So you're going to have people that have different backgrounds. I don't just want a plumber to go in and start to do my roof, right? And that is the benefit. Using an example of a Trivial Pursuit game, if you were paired up with one other person and you knew that you were going against two people, then what would that other person that you're paired up with be like? that's an easy example and kind of a way to visualize why diversity is important and why diversity of thought is so important. We're not just looking for diversity of appearance, we're looking for diversity of thought, but diversity of thought can often be the most dangerous for interpersonal conflict. So the interpersonal conflict, what does that do? That will make us dislike our job. We become disconnected, we become disengaged, and we may not want to either go to work, we may leave the organization, which at that point we've lost that talent. Now we need to replace the talent, and we still have that gap. It never was fixed in the first place. So what would happen is if we don't fix that gap, the next person's going to have the same issue, or we're going to hire someone that's more similar to us, losing the benefit of diversity. And then we will assume that it was just that person that terminated. It was their fault. It was not ours. When in the meanwhile, it was the organization. We just had our blinders up the whole time.
Wow, how's that for so much that's come out of this one little program, right? But it's not really a little program. It's huge, right? It's impact. It sounds like can really have a huge impact on organizations. Justin, did you have this planned out? Was this part of your whole master plan when you put this thing together?
Yeah, you would assume that it was, but I'm afraid I cannot take credit for really anything, but for sure, really can't take credit for where and what it has become, because really at the heart of what we do at Go Culture for the last 20 years has been about improving lives, and that sounds a little kind of pie in the sky sounding, but my co-founder and I, Dr. Carly Dodd, who is now in his 70s, and so I run Go Culture now, but he has always been, I have a deep level of respect for this guy, because it's always been about how do we help people. Opportunities may be out there to serve organizations and things. What's really important is can we improve some lives here? Can we improve family interaction, these organizations in different ways, experiences? And I was always blown away by that. And so that is really our motive that we move forward, whether we're working with organizations who relocate people internationally and they want to improve that cross-cultural experience, or whether we're doing a diversity, equity, inclusion assessment and training. Whatever the case may be, the purpose of Go Culture is to provide organizations a kind of a software for these soft skills, we might call it. How do we help understand and train individuals on these interpersonal interactions across diversity? That's been tough in the past, and it's still tough today. But with a program like this, we are able to step in and offer a very strong solution, kind of in a turnkey model now, which has not been possible in the past.
Wow, sounds like an amazing software. And if people want to get a hold of it, what should they do?
Yeah, sure. Of course, there are a couple ways to do that. Our website is at goculture.org. And you can reach our Vice President of Sales, who is Al Dennis, at al, just A-L, at goculture.org. And those are some of the best ways to get in touch with us. You can expect an immediate reaction to get back with you and try to help you solve some of the challenges you may be seeing at your organization. And it doesn't mean you have to, be in triage right now to contact us. We all, I think, have room for improvement. Every organization can get better at this. Even if you're in a top 10 diversity organization, a lot of times those gauges are not about our attitudes and behaviors and things. They're more about how many people do we have of different ethnic backgrounds. And that's helpful. That's a great step in the right direction. But how do we make sure that all 10,000 of our employees are headed the right direction when it comes to their attitudes, their behaviors, their overall aptitudes in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I encourage people to check us out at goculture.org.
Thank you, Dr. Justin Velton. Appreciate you coming on talking today. And thank you, Andrew Brucey, for all the practical applications. And if anybody's interested, reach out to Go Culture, find out a little bit more about DEI, a little diversity and inclusion training. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. It was a privilege.